And that's kind of how it originally started, because it was like a bunch of us talking shit of like, oh, bro, if I ever went against you, I'd fucking take, our crew would take your crew out. And that kind of transition in Survivor games where it's like, all right, well, we got this platform now. Let's see who's really the top dog in DayZ. And then obviously other people in the community wanted to get involved. Yeah, I think it's kind of like falling back to everyone wants to somehow leave their mark, right? And I think the video game kind of gives you, or a video game, I should say, gives you a unique way to do that, because you're definitely going to have to put pieces of yourself into it, right? Like anything you work on is going to reflect who you are as a person.
You've been listening to today's guest, Lou, and this is Emotive. I'm your host, Dan, and judging by the response on Twitter I got putting out the promo on Friday, I'm guessing that some of you know today's guests. So if you're a new listener, welcome. This podcast kind of started as a way for me to have some one-on-one conversations with friends and try to kind of expand my knowledge base and horizons. And also, I just love podcasts. So that was some of my motivations behind it. But I just love having these one-on-one discussions where we set aside time to learn more about each other. And today was no different. Got to talk to Lou about a lot of things. We got to talk about Lou's early interest in video games, his service in the military, including one special story from that, just transitioning into how he ended up going to school for game development, and then his path to finding a job, and then some other topics that we get into along the way. And there's this apparently infamous thing called Story Time with Lou, and that's what we're here for today. So, and a little side note that I'm going to put at the beginning and the end of this episode: I'm going to be off next week for a family outing. So if you're new to the podcast, feel free to check out some of the back catalog while I'm absent, and subscribe if you enjoy. Thanks very much. Our website is pod.co/emotive. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the show, Lou. It's been a while since I talked to you.
Yeah, it is been a minute.
I don't know. It must have been, I don't even know. Like, when did we do that? It was like the first season of that role play campaign with Thoglore. That must have been like 2017 or something. But I think I've seen you here and there in Thoglore's channel, maybe in the chat. But yeah,
I'm trying to remember, dude. Like everything, it's weird because it's like everything in the past, I think last 3 years has just been at like warp speed for me.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
like everything is just mushed together, right? Like I'm thinking, oh yeah, that was like, a year ago, and I'm talking with Hicks and stuff, and it's like, dude, that was like 3-4 years ago. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Is my timeline all fucked up now?
I have the same problem with the last couple of years. Yeah, we'll just say it's been a few years. Yeah, I just wanted to, like, we chatted throughout the campaign then, but I never really got to know you as a person. So that's kind of what I wanted to do today, is to just kind of hear a little bit about yourself and your story. Everybody has like this story of how they found Twitch, and like, whatever your background when you were a kid up until now playing games. Like, obviously, if you're still playing games into your 20s, and I don't even know, how old are you now? You're what, late 20s?
Early 30s.
Early 30s. Gotcha. Yeah. If you're playing, I would say if you're playing games into your 30s, it's still holding your interest in a way. So tell me a little bit about your background and like why you're still playing games now.
I think for me, it was weird. Like my mom used to work a lot when I was little. And so I was always at like daycare centers and latchkey type stuff. One of her friends ran this daycare, and so I'd be there all the time. And there was like it's the first Nintendo and Super Nintendo, like the next year they got it. And I never really I'd play here and there, but I never really got like hooked into it. And then like my mom's friend bought me a Game Boy, and I was like 4th grade, 5th grade, I think, like the clear ones, like the old big fat ones.
Yep. I had one. Yep.
Like the only game I had for it was like Tetris that my mom's like boyfriend had bought me. And I was just like, bro, this is going to hold my attention for all of like You can only play Tetris, so it's not really like a game that hooks you, right?
Yeah. It's funny. Because didn't the Game Boy come with Tetris?
Yeah, pretty much. He's like, here, I got you this game. And it's like, you could tell it had already been opened and then like separately wrapped. And I was just like, come
Thanks,
on, bro.
man.
But then like Pokemon came out, right? And I think that was like my first taste of just like, dude, this is going to fucking, I don't know. I just got glued to it. It was like my first run in with video games where I was actually like immersed in it. I mean, not really, like you can't really get immersed in Pokemon, right?
Sure you can. I mean, you could. Like there's a lot to do because you got to catch them all, right?
Right, but not on the level where like, you know, when you're playing DayZ and you're
I hear you. Okay.
in it. I mean, you just get glued to Pokemon. You don't get like, I don't know, maybe you do, but
it's all relative. As a kid, like you consume what's in front of you. So you could I got immersed in the most simple games just because I wanted an escape from my reality. So was it kind of like the same for you? You wanted to like eat up some of this shitty time where you just got to wait around?
I think so. And it kind of gave me that like sense of achievement, right? Like, dude, I'm beating the shit out of these fucking pleb ass trainers, you know, like as you're working your way up to your first gym, like, sure, I got this. And then you're playing the first gym and you're like, okay, well, I picked the wrong starter Pokemon. Let me restart. Like that was a dry run. Like we're not even worried about that. And you're just like going through these paces where it's challenging, but you're overcoming like what's put in front of you, right? Whereas for me, like in school and shit, I always struggled and there was just not that like, I don't know, motivation to complete the quote unquote quest, you know, your homework or whatever, however you want to frame that. And so here I felt like I was having fun with what I was doing and feeling like I was progressing and getting better. And like I had the whole, what were those like Nintendo guidebooks, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, you know, planning out what Pokemon I'm going to take to the Elite Four. And like, I had no clue about like the IV breeding and all that stuff. I mean, the internet was still a little bit early there. It was like dial up still.
Yeah. It was like late 90s or what? Or
yeah, it had to be late 90s because I was in like fifth grade, sixth grade, I think, when I like really started playing to it. But I was always kind of nerdy in that fact of like, if it wasn't video games, I'd be reading a book. Like, I think I'm one of the few kids that probably got in trouble for reading a book and not doing their chores and shit.
Really? Okay.
Because it's just like, you're obviously in a way more interesting place than the sink washing dishes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of had the same thing. I would get in trouble for, but mostly it was video games. Like they would encourage me to read books, but it just like was not an option for me to skip chores. It was pretty obvious if I wasn't doing them. So it was like instantly like, boom, get up there, do it. Yeah, no, the Pokemon thing like completely passed me by because it was just a few years. You know, by the time it was becoming popular, I was like a sophomore or junior in high school. So it was just like a little bit too kid friendly for me at the time. So I was just like I was a few years past that. So, but yeah, that wasn't the answer I was expecting. I wasn't expecting you to go into Pokemon and all this stuff. But no, that's cool. I mean, everybody starts somewhere. For me, it was, you know, Nintendo and Game Boy and then Super Nintendo. And it was, you know, PlayStation and Nintendo 64 around the time when I was getting into high school and stuff like that. But
yeah, I could never convince my my stepdad and my mom to ever get me into that stuff because it was just, they saw it as like too expensive, right? And I mean, I guess back then, you know, a couple $100 went a lot further than it does now.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, no, we got a Nintendo when like the Super Nintendo was coming out. You know? Yeah. And then we got the Super Nintendo when, you know, when other stuff. So we always were like a generation behind. So how did you end up signing up for the military? You know, what branch were you in? And
my mom started dating this guy and they ended up getting married, became my stepdad. And he was used to be in the Marine Corps. And so like all growing up, it was kind of like we go to the air shows. He'd take me to the little Marine Corps recruiting freaking corner they had there, right? And you're doing like the pull-ups trying to get the T-shirt. And like no matter how you do the pull-ups, it's not perfect enough. So I was always like 5 shy, but I weighed like next to nothing then. I was probably like 90 pounds soaking wet, like growing up. I never put on a shit ton of weight. I don't know, fast metabolism, fucking something. Going through high school, I just kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. Like at some point, I think I was like dead set on opening a reptile pet shop or something.
Okay.
Yeah, dude, I was all over the place, man. Like I just didn't know what the hell I wanted to do with myself growing up. I was just like, this seems interesting, and I get sucked into that, and then be like, all right, this new thing seems cool, get sucked into that. But yeah, so like I got out of high school, and I didn't want to go like right into college because one, I didn't like my family was not well off by any means, so there was no money coming in. My mom had like divorced my stepdad, and it was pretty nasty. So they were both like pulling each other all over the place with trying to court fees and all that other stuff. So I was working construction with my uncle, and he was giving me some like cash on the side to help him out, like while I decided what I wanted to do. And my cousin came over for like a family reunion thing and was telling everyone like, oh yeah, I joined the Marine Corps, signed up, going to boot camp soon. I'm sitting there thinking in my head like, I thought about doing that. Like that seems pretty dope. Like that's definitely going to be an adventure, right? And if she can do it, dude, it can't be that freaking hard.
Yeah, sure.
And this is like me dumb at like 18. And like, and then they say they pay for your freaking school and all that stuff. So, what the heck, let's go do it. And I went with her to recruiter's office. I remember like, all right, so what do you want to, we're going to have you take this ASVAB, depending on how you score, we'll tell you what jobs are open if there's slots and stuff like that. I was like, all right. So I take this test, and like, I'm not an idiot, but I definitely like did not try hard in high school. Like I never really applied myself.
Mm-hmm.
I just never was a fan of homework, and there was no way to apply the advanced math into anything that kind of piqued my interest to want to continue down that route. So like this test was the weirdest thing because there's like all this math stuff on there, some logic and all that. I'm just like guessing at this point because like, fuck, I don't even remember this in school, whatever. And apparently, like, I didn't score high, but I scored well enough that, like, I was qualified for all the jobs except for, like, fucking bionuclear, some shit,
Oh, really?
Like, stuff
Wow.
I wouldn't even care about. Anyways, like, sounds cool, but I don't really want to play with radiation. I'm, like, not really all about that. So he's, like, looking at me like, all right, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, let's do infantry. And he just looks at me like I'm crazy. Like, I was like, why else would you join the military? Like, if I wanted to go drive a car, go get like a trucking fucking job, right?
Yeah,
like,
sure. I mean, is it fair to say that like you didn't really know that was an option you thought like if you're going to join the Marine Corps, you're going to become like a Marine, like you see in movies and stuff, and you didn't realize that there's actual like career paths that people can take.
Right. Yeah. Like I wish I would have taken the ones that were more geared towards like programming and, stuff like that. Cause as I was getting out, the recruiter called me about that. And I was just like, nah, bro, it'll make sense as we talk about it later. But I was like, I'm already done. I did 4 years. You guys are fucking batshit crazy.
I mean, did you even know that was a path you wanted to take when you're 18? It seems like you weren't even sure. You were going to figure it out later, right?
I was dead set, like, I'm going to do 20 years. I'm going to fucking retire and be like infantry badass. Like, that's going to be me. And so they're like, all right, well, we got like presidential security. And I was like, does that come with like a top secret clearance? And like, yeah. And I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to be James, like in my head, like I'm going to be like James Bond. And thank fucking God that like the events leading up to me shipping out to boot camp happened, because I would have been even more miserable.
Oh boy.
Basically, presidential security is, you see like when they're doing those news conferences, those Marines that stand like outside the White House and just salute, and they just like fucking stand there all day, pretty much.
Yep.
That's what presidential security is.
Oh my God. You stand at attention for how long?
I don't know, but it's got to be freaking couple hour shifts knowing the Marine Corps, if not longer. I don't know. I just know that like learning like that's what that was like, dude, why would anyone want to do that? Like probably, like people like me thinking, oh yeah, top secret clearance, presidential security. I'm like president's bodyguard and shit or something, Yeah. But it's just standing there looking like a moron in a uniform. Like, nah. So,
I mean, yeah, first to each their own, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, maybe for some dudes, but just for me, like I get all fidgety, like standing there, like I'll just get bored. Like, what are you supposed to do? Just sit there and you're standing in one place for hours. I don't know.
Well, what was it like for you? Because you had to do some sort of a boot camp, right? Like basic training and stuff like that.
I mean, I tried to wallflower my way through there, right? Like I'd done some military, like my stepdad sent me to military summer camp. So I kind of was already familiar with like drill and rank and all that stuff. And so that wasn't like as pain in the ass. Like I guess I didn't draw the attention too hard as far as like messing any of that kind of stuff up, right? And then getting thrashed for it. But like ended up, they have this thing that's called like the house mouse, right? And what that is during morning cleanup, you go and you clear the drill instructor's room, like freaking clean out his shower, mop the floor. You're like the fucking maid bitch, right? But everybody else is cleaning like the rest of squad bay, so it's not as bad. But
you're probably judged a lot more harshly, I would guess, right?
Yes and no. Like I don't. It really depends. Like in my experience, and I don't know if this is just like maybe each company does it differently, or drill instructors may have their own ways of what they do. And maybe like our dude you call it house mouse. It might be, I don't know. It's weird because like everyone tends to do things differently, right? He would call us in. It was me and this other kid, Vayon. And we were like the two scrawniest skinny guys. I think I was like $120 when I went into boot camp. Like we were on double rations to get more food to try to like bulk us up. We were just like the scrawny little kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in there, we'd be cleaning, and the drill instructor would be asking us questions like, so who's a kiss ass? Like trying to girl us for information on what's going on in the squad bay. So, and then like bribing us with like, oh, you want this power bar? Yeah, tell me what so-and-so was doing last night, blah, blah. So it's like this weird like interrogation, but like trying
sounds
to
like a prison warden.
Right? It's fucking creepy. And I was just like, all right, I guess I can use this to his favor. So like all the dudes that were just like making everybody else miserable because they'd be fucking up, just throw them under the bus even more and getting like power bars and shit out of it. Like nothing malicious, but just like, yeah, that motherfucker talks mad shit when your back's turned.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's just funny because like you don't really like think about it then, but it's like, yeah, it's basically like it's similar to prison, right? Where you're like talking to the guard, like, yeah, that motherfucker's over there doing shady shit. And like you're trying to redirect their attention away from like all the shady shit you're doing or your group's doing. And that's pretty much how it was. Like we had one dude like stashing granola bars and shit. And then so someone on watch took one of those and put it in this other dude's stuff that had been fucking around in morning cleanup, getting us all sent to the sand pit and shit.
Ooh.
And so then when they called me in for morning cleanup, they're asking, and I'm like, yeah, that dude. Saw him grab granola bar the other day and try to hide it in his pack. So then he got like thrashed even more and shit. So it was like this weird, like fucking
like sabotage going on both ways.
Yeah. Like you got, cause you're a platoon, but you're split into, 4 squads, and each squad has a squad leader. How to like compare it? So it's almost like a house mom or something, right? Like he's making sure all the ducks follow and whatnot, like make sure everyone's doing their shit. Breaks them into teams of 4 and assigns team leaders. It's almost like this little managerial system, right?
Yeah, there's a hierarchy to it.
Yeah. Boot camp was interesting because I tried to wallflower as much as possible because you're constantly like in their office in the presence of the senior drill instructor all the time. Like they can't not help but know who you are, right? And keeping their eye on you, seeing what you're up to as well. So it's just like trying to wallflower, but no matter like what you do, you're always gonna get fucking looked at and examined, right?
Yeah, it seems impossible when you're in that situation. So moving past then, what were you assigned to, and like were you deployed and all of that?
Yeah, so I got sent to Lejeune over in North Carolina, which is I didn't know. Apparently, like if you're coming from the Midwest, you can pick like, hey, I want to go West Coast or East Coast, but I never, because you're kind of like on this line. Whereas like if you're closer to the East Coast, they just automatically send you to Paris Island. So I don't know if maybe just that quota got filled up real quick and that choice wasn't available anymore. Had I known, I would have gone to California, because like North Carolina in itself isn't bad, right? I don't have anything against the state, but right around military bases, there's like all them skeezy motherfuckers come in there, right, and set up businesses trying to get like the most they can milk out of the guys that are like young, dumb, and got money, from the government for the first time. So like everyone's, oh, dude. So like the stereotypical car everyone gets is like a Mustang, but you don't realize it till you have one, and then you're looking around like, wow, like all the guys, it's like
everyone has a Mustang.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay. Yeah, I've actually never heard that part of it before. There's people that like take advantage of the enlisted guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got these kids coming from nothing, right? Because again, you got that lure of like, yo, we'll pay for your college. And you got a lot of people that they can't afford it, family can't afford it. So this is like, oh, I just do 4 years, whatever the fuck you tell me. That's not too long. I can do that, and then at least get a bachelor's out of it, right? And
Sure.
I don't know about you, but like going through school, it's like, oh, you can't get a job unless you have a fucking degree.
That's what they always told me. Yep.
North Carolina, like fucking Jacksonville. It's just that area. Like you can just drive through it and you can pick up right on it. Like, this is skeezy. Yeah, dude. There's so many. Like I could sit here literally all day and just tell you just fucking off the wall stories from just that 4 years. It was like the most interesting experience for me coming from like a fairly sheltered growing up.
Huh. And you kind of get thrown to the wolves. You had been to that summer camp, but what you were going through was nothing like summer camp,
Oh no, they don't got like hookers trying to pick you up at summer camp. You know what I mean? Dude,
Yeah.
I'd never even experienced that in my life. Like I grew up in some like pretty ghetto areas, but like my mom always pretty much kept me inside and away from all of that. So I never really like I knew of it, but never like saw it firsthand. So it was just always the weirdest experience for me when you're in the military. And like, I'll give you one example. So I just turned 19 and I was in SOI, which is School of Infantry. And they gave us a 96, which is like 4 days off, because 96 hours is why it's called 96, just for some background.
Right. Okay.
So they give us this 96 and like, don't get any tattoos. You got defense next week. We don't want, defense week coming up. We don't want them getting infected and all this other crap. And me, it's like, nah, dude, I'm hardcore infantry. I'm, badass. I'm getting me a tattoo, So the first thing we do is we get like this hotel room in Wilmington, me and my buddy. And then we get shit-faced, catch a cab down to this tattoo place, and I get this freaking tattoo on my forearm. And then we're like, yeah, I'll get drunk and go out to the strip club. Like, never been to a strip club. Like, it's almost like this rite of passage. So, like, my first experience was weird because, I mean, you're in the military, you're just drunk all the time. I mean, at least I was. I don't know. Maybe my unit was just really heavy on it. But it's like you get off work, you start drinking. You sleep for a couple hours and then you go puke it out at PT and eat breakfast, right? But yeah, so we're like out there and we're in the parking lot where we called a cab to take us to the strip club. And we're waiting a good like 15 minutes. And it normally doesn't take this long for the cabs to show up. And my buddy's friend, who was from a different unit, comes running up and he's like, yo, these two chicks will give us a ride to Crazy Horse. And I was like, all right, how much? And he's like, they only said $5, which was like way cheaper than the freaking cab. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'm down with this. And so we start, and they were like parked off down the parking lot. Like I didn't see them from where it was. So we're like walking through the parking lot and it's like this freaking Dodge Intrepid. It was like a 96 or something.
Yep.
And the paint on the top was all like chipped off down to bare steel.
Okay.
And like, it's this big chick driving, like not like fat or anything, but like stocky, like look like a female version of your stereotypical bouncer, right?
Okay.
And then there's this really, really skinny chick in the back, and she's like, "Are you guys, going to have a good time?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're going to a strip club." Like all drunk and excited. I was like, "It's my birthday." And she's like, "All right, we'll get in the back. We'll take you there." And I was like, "All right." And I hop in, and my buddy goes to hop in the middle with me, like next to me in the back seat. And she's like, "Oh, no, 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 no." And she gets between me and him, and then his friend sits up in the passenger seat. So we pull off and we start getting on the highway, and she just looks at my buddy. She's like, "So you want me to suck your dick?" And I'm at this point just like, what? Like out of left field for me, like, well, this took a weird turn. Like, I just thought we were just getting a ride, I wasn't trying to judge a book by its cover, trying to be all, nice and shit.
Yeah. But they're just trying to make a little money on the side, giving people rides to the strip club. I mean,
yeah, like whatever, $5. Like, I don't know. I used to do that back home. Maybe it's the same out here. I was just, just an innocent snowflake, man.
Yep. I mean, you never. This is the first time you've ever seen this happen. So
yeah, I'm thinking like it's always in the movies, right? They're standing on the corner like hollering and stuff, and I was just like, this is new. I'm just like, this is kind of like, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep an eye on this. And my buddy's like, no, I got a girlfriend, but it's my buddy's birthday. And she like swivels over to me and just grabs me. And I'm like, no, I'm engaged. Can't really do that. Nah, like, I'm good. Thank you. I'm really like trying to just beg off.
Jeez, your friend sure threw you under the bus, though. I mean,
yeah. And so his friend up front turns around and is like, how much? Like $50? And I'm just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, I just want to go to the strip club, bro. Like, so she's like, laughs it off. She's like, oh, it's not that expensive. It's like $25 or something. And I'm sitting in my mind like, really? Only $25 for a blowjob? It does seem fairly cheap and economic. But so like, I'm noticing that we're driving the opposite way to Crazy Horse by all the interstate signs. And I'm like, this is fucking hella sketch. Like, just like something's not sitting right. And so she's like, yeah, pull over and you can get in the back and your friend can sit up front and I'll suck your dick. I'm just like, this is not fucking happening right now. Oh. Like, what the fuck? And so I had, you know, those old like Nextel flip phones they had back in the day, the cell phones. You know how you could hit it on the side and it would make it beep and sound like your phone's ringing? Uh-huh. So I did that on my phone and I whip it out and I'm like, oh, you're like acting like it's my buddy calling me. You're locked out of the hotel. Oh, yeah, I can still see it from the highway. You know, we'll just hop out right now. We're already pulled over and I'll let you in, bro. It'll be good. And I like hang up and I was like, look, love to stay. Thanks for like half a ride. But like my hotel is just right across over there. My buddy's locked out. So I gotta let him in. And they're like trying to keep me in this car. Like, no, we'll drive you back. And I was like, nah, it's good. Cause I'm like, I don't want these fucking people to know where I'm at. Like, this is already sketchy as fuck. And so like I get out and I'm like, you know, waving to my buddy, like, come on, bro, get your friend, look the fuck out of here. And like he jumps out and the driver's still trying to get us to like get back in the car and shit. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, I'll just hop the fence. It's like cars are zooming by at like freaking 70, 75. Like, I'm bailing out of this car on the side of the highway like it's about to explode. And this dude's just like, no, you guys go ahead. I really want my dick sucked. And just like hops in all hunky-dory in the back. And meanwhile, the driver's still like, get in the car. And I'm like, no. And I hop over and she like swoops around and tries to follow us back. And we're like, what the fuck? Like, so we like, I just bought these fucking new jeans for my birthday. And you know, you got this money, you ain't got no one to tell you that you can't blow $80 on a pair of jeans. It's not really smart. Uh-huh. So I got like these brand new $80 jeans. I'm thinking I'm looking Gucci for the strip club. And I go to hop over this fence. It's got barbed wire and just blows the whole crotch out, catching it. I'm just like,
of course.
Then I'm wading through this like semi-marshy, swampy area and like get up to the fucking hotel, come through the front door, looking straight like a bum, dude, like covered in mud, clothes are all ripped up. And she's just looking at me like, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And what is it? And I'm like, what's up? And I get in the elevator and just go to my room.
Oh my God.
And then like the weekend progresses, some other crazy stuff happens, but those are like other stories. But to kind of tie up that story, so we get back after the 96 and like we get done with formation and I'm like, hey Carter, whatever like happened to your boy? Kind of needs some closure on like, did he like, I'm just curious at this point because that was just fucking crazy, right? He's like, I don't know, dude. He hasn't checked in for formation. He's UA right now, which is unauthorized absent. And so I was like, oh shit. So come to find out, apparently they drove him down to some shady area. He got like, as he was getting his, you know, his what he paid for. Yep. Like they at the end dropped him off in this really shady neighborhood and he ended up getting mugged. And then had a little bit of a burn when he got back because it took him a while to get out because he didn't know where he was. So he was like a day late to formation.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then he's complaining about some burn-in. So not on top of freaking getting mugged, he basically paid $25 for a freaking case of herp. And it's just like, God.
I think you guys made the right choice.
Right. But, I mean, I don't understand how you could not see that was just
a trap.
Yeah. Never seen someone so intent to make $5 getting someone to a strip club.
I'm guessing that you didn't get in the vehicle with two ladies who were running a gray market taxi service after that.
Oh God, no. Like the only reason I trust Uber is because they charge more than $5, so it's got to be legit, right?
Sure.
Ugh.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, you've got like just a million stories from that time in your life. And I'm sure that experience, like, what did you take from that whole experience that you like immediately applied to your civilian life afterwards?
So I got out in like 2010, and Michigan was pretty like still economically unstable as far as like jobs and everything, right? Like there wasn't a lot of work to find unless you wanted to be flipping burgers.
Right.
So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go to school because they're basically giving me like freaking money for rent and all that and paying for my tuition. So like, why would I not? And then I can spend that 4 years, figuring out what I want to do. So I was talking to my mom about it. And I was, for some reason, I was like, I'm thinking psychology. I just think I can do some really good stuff there. Like it's interesting. Like for some reason, just the abnormal psychology kind of stuff, like dealing with schizophrenia and all that is just interesting, right? Because it's so different from the norm. And growing up, I wasn't heavily exposed to a lot of that behavior. So like as I came across it kind of in my travels, it always just was like, oh, this is fucking like really interesting. I'd kind of just want to like sit here and unravel and poke at this and see what all of this kind of, information is out there. And so I was kind of about to, start looking for a school kind of around that. And my mom's like, well, you like video games? Why don't you just, go to video game school? Like,
really?
Yeah. And I was like, Mom, there's not video game school. She's like, it's on the internet. I guarantee you can find something like that. And I'm like, all right, hold on. And I like, and sure as shit, like Full Sail University, teach you like games. And they did like video recording, music recording. Like they had the whole suite. Like, you want to work in movies? We got classes for you. You want to fucking be a rap artist? We got classes for you. And like the education there was legit. It was just, it's still a for-profit school, right? Like my buddy who went there got out with like $132,000 to pay off on student loans.
Holy shit.
For a 2-year degree.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like I got out even with the GI Bill and yellow ribbon and all, so because that gives you a little bit extra money. I still had like 32,000, which is nothing compared to what he had. But yeah, I went there and I was like, I remember calling them. They're like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to work in design because I'm seeing you have the master's in design. And like dumb grunt coming out of the military and not ever even thinking about college till after I got out. I wasn't like, I didn't pay attention in high school. So like how the degree program progressed, like I never understood that. And like, well, you got to get your bachelor's first. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, let's get my bachelor's in design. And like, well, we only have a master's. You have to either take programming or art. And then once you finish that bachelor's, you can take that master's class or course. And I was like, okay, well, and they're like, so do you like numbers or do you like drawing more? And I was like, I definitely love doodling over numbers. And they're like, great, we'll sign you up for art. And I was like, all right.
Like, Jesus,
this happened. And like,
that's a pretty basic question. Like,
right. It's a for-profit school. Like not to try to devalue what they teach because they have legit like industry people, but as far as on the business side of things, in the end, it's still a for-profit school. Right?
If you're interested at all, they want to sell it. Right. Yeah.
Like they don't care.
They're not trying to scare you away. They're trying to draw you in. So
yes. Yeah.
Okay, buddy, you like numbers or do you like drawn pictures?
Like this isn't no Ivy League where they're like, all right, we only have so many slots. We got world renowned motherfuckers.
Yeah. No, I've heard a lot of people that get degrees from there end up getting a decent job. So I mean, it wasn't a bad choice.
No, I mean it's definitely one of the better schools for that kind of
specialized schools for what you ended up doing.
Oh yeah, like a lot of guys went to that graduated. Like even my roommate my buddy that I was in classes with, he ended up working for it's the Warner Brothers studio that did Lord of the Rings online.
Okay.
Anyways, so then I go in there for that, and now I like graduate with this degree in fucking video game art, right? Which is basically like it's a computer science degree, but heavily focused on like, working in 3D software programs.
Sure.
So I'm like applying for jobs and everything. And when I was in school, I'd stumbled on Twitch trying to watch E3 or looking for like E3 footage that was streaming on the internet while I was in class. And so when I got out at the end of that degree program, you spend the last 5 months teamed up with some people that took the programming classes, and you make a video game in 5 months from scratch. Like, you don't start off with Unreal or anything. Like, they build the engine, you give them the art, they're making like shaders and all this stuff. But it's 5 months. It's like going in there, you're like, yeah, we're going to make this badass game. It's like, no, dude, you got 5 months. Like, please try to keep it simple.
It's an extended game jam, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean, shit, there was times we were pulling like 24 hours of like, we get kicked out of because they'd only have it open from like the latest would be like, I think 9 p.m. And so then we'd sneak into the computer labs and keep working and stuff.
Oh,
so
shit.
Like we poured time into that. And one of the programmers started an AMA about it on Reddit and got like a lot of people interested on just like the process we went through and the game we whipped up, which was pretty much like a cheap Dead Space type game, right? Third person, same kind of camera setup, running through this sci-fi area with stuff popping through vents. It was just kind of like an homage to Dead Space, basically.
Okay. Sounds badass, actually.
But like the graphics, I mean, this was like 2010. It was good for a 5-month project. I'll give it that. But like, there's still aspects of me, like when I look back at the art stuff I did there, I was like, oh man, I wish I could have like go back and fix some of those things with like
right.
up.
Well, that's just like sort of is it sort of like the perfectionism that you have when you're working with art, right? Like you always can iterate and make it better.
Oh, yeah. And just the fact, I mean, at least for me, I'm always sitting there going like, I could see someone looking at this and then just ripping it apart. And like, if I was ripping this apart, this is where I'd rip it apart. And I'd start trying to like address those areas. But it becomes like this knot you're trying to entangle, right?
Sure.
And you get frustrated and you're like really just going at it, but you're just making it worse. Like there's still that tendency in art as well. So it's like, you definitely want to be like in the right state of mind as you're going in to fix these things. Oh my God. I don't even know if it's still be out here, but like it was like top of the IndieDB for a while. So we were like
interesting.
cheesing on that because it got like a lot of Reddit attention. People were looking at it. So then I can't remember his name because it's been so long and I feel horrible because he's kind of the guy that got me into Twitch. He used to do his own little show on Twitch where he'd like focus on indie games and stuff. This is back in, again, 2012 at this point.
Yeah. So like playing different games and kind of giving him a little first impressions and stuff like that.
Yeah, like he'd find these indie games that people put on IndieDB or, stuff that was on IndieDB that was blowing up. And he kind of tried to get the people that worked on it and talk and kind of have like a podcast thing on Twitch.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really a little ahead of its time. Even.
Oh, yeah. So he kind of got me into the streaming and was explaining a lot of it. And I was like, this is a really cool platform. And then DayZ came out. I saw it on, do you know who Mike B, a.k.a. Phony is?
Doesn't sound familiar, but...
Back before Shizzle was on Twitch, Mike, a.k.a. Phony, would do like MMO report stuff. And I want to say he was working with Curse for a little bit, doing video reviews, stuff like that. But I remember stumbling on a video of Mike B and Shizzle playing DayZ. And I was like, dude, that looks hella fun. And so I got the game and I started playing it and I was just blown away at how complex it was, right? Never played an army sim to that level. And I'm just like, holy crap, there's a lot of like freaking controls to keep track of here.
Yeah, for one.
So then I hop back on Twitch because I'm like, I'm going to find other people playing this to see kind of like what's the loop, right? And then I stumbled on Omnikai and from there it just sucked me in, right? I think I was doing like an internship for the school, trying to like find a job in the meantime. And then he was like so chill. He's just pretty much like, yeah, you're interning for me. Just go work on some project that makes you happy and don't bother me. And I'm like, This is the best internship ever.
That's pretty amazing.
Granted, it would have been nicer to learn a bunch of shit, but I think I was so sucked into Twitch at that point. It was just like, well, I mean, I guess it's helping me, because I was getting, as long as you're in the internship, you could extend. All right, I got to kind of step back a little bit. So with the GI Bill, you get like 4 years to do your bachelor's. Well, at Full Sail, they had a 2-year program. So I knocked my bachelor's out in 2 years, but I still could utilize those other 2 years of the GI Bill to start something else. And originally, I think I was going to start working on the Masters of Design, but I kind of got sucked into this internship of like, well, maybe I'm not sure. Maybe I'll just stay in art. This isn't so bad. And so while I was kind of like figuring out what to do there, I was like, all right, I'll do this internship because I'll still get living expenses from the GI Bill. So like my rent will be covered and utilities and stuff like that. And it kind of gives me some time to sort out what I want to do. Well, that's when I got sucked into DayZ and Twitch. And it was like, I'd be watching Kai and then he'd be like, oh, hop in the game, and we'd be playing together and we'd be up for like fucking almost 24 hours playing this game. Like, I swear to God,
Damn.
I slept probably like 5 hours. It would be like, wake up, eat something, hop on, we'd all start playing. And then it'd be late as fuck. We'd go to sleep for 5 hours and just rinse and repeat. And this was like the heyday of the mod days.
Yeah. Was this like 2012 around like May, June, July, that time? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. So who else was in that group?
So it was me, Kai, Tommy the Gunner.
Yep. I know that name.
Death Snake. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I don't think so.
Hicks, Soma.
Okay. The OGs, basically.
Yeah. Because it was like back then, Kai was second to Lyric at that point. Like,
yep.
I think Summit was still doing like CSGO. So like, I don't even think I knew about him because I was like so just in just that DayZ portion of it. Like, I didn't give a fuck about the rest of Twitch, like whatever.
There was a time when Summit was trying to learn DayZ mod. He was like asking the chat. And, I was answering questions in his chat about DayZ mod. I had this random anecdote about that. But yeah, he wasn't too committed to it, let's say. He was kind of experimenting with it at the time.
I think like the second biggest dude that I knew of, I can't remember his name. He's like a StarCraft 2 dude. Oh man, I could have swore it started with an S. But he got into DayZ mod a little bit, and it was funny watching some of just the shenanigans he would do.
You realize kind of how Twitch is this sort of dynamic thing. It was in its infancy still, and you realize there was the side of people that were really good at games, and there were other people who were just trying to make content by having fun and having a laugh at how bad they were at things or whatever it was. It was about the personalities, right? More so than the gameplay is how it ended up, or at least around that time.
Yeah. Oh, the dude's name. Do you know who Destiny is?
Yes.
That's the guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, everybody was playing DayZ mod at that time. DayZ was like the biggest thing on Twitch that year, more or less. I mean, I guess World of Warcraft was still kicking.
Yeah. It was between World of Warcraft and DayZ.
Yeah. It was the biggest up and coming game. Let's just say that. And it was just a mod. Yeah. It was just a mod. So.
I think that's what blew my mind because, like, coming out of school and wanting to get a job, I was like, maybe I should hit up this dude and see if, I can get down helping with this project. Back before I really knew who Dean Hall was, right?
Yeah.
And by the time, like, that concept even hit me, because it was like I'd been sucked into playing it so much, like they were already starting up on that standalone and everything with Bohemia.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it just took me because of just like all the different just little stuff that would just make these unique moments, right? Like I remember me and Brian got those satchel charges.
Yeah.
And like we had like Kai up on the hill in Electro and Tommy, Death Snake was with us. And we're up on this hill. And then me and Brian moved down. You know the sniper hill in Electro that looked the fire station? So they're up there like watching it, right? And me and Brian sneak down and take the satchel charge and put it at the very top where everyone would go to look for pistols. And so you couldn't get.
Wait, are we talking about at the firehouse?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely.
At the very top of this, the ladder you would climb up. And so like me and Brian snuck back and we're hiding in these bushes because we couldn't get too far. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to trigger the satchel charge. And so like we're waiting for them to tell us when to blow it. And so you just like the clip that was floating around. It's Brian's probably got it. He always keeps track of that stuff. But it's like looking through Kai's scope and you see this dude go up to the top and look down. And then just Brian blows this guy to pieces. And the biggest joke for a while was like, oh, look, a backpack. And
yeah, because couldn't you kind of hide the satchels underneath an object if you dropped it or something? Yeah.
It was just great. Like just the little stuff like that you couldn't do in any other game, right?
Yeah. Oh, man, the sandbox games, at least in like, there was not like a sandbox mill sim. The concept of like a survival game like that, just if it existed, it certainly didn't hit the masses. That's for sure.
Oh,
Not
yeah,
in that,
very
not
niche.
in the world of milsim anyway, right?
Yeah, no.
And zombies and all that stuff.
I didn't even know
Yeah.
about Arma until DayZ. Like, had no clue it even existed.
Yeah. I mean, freaking the combined operations became one of the top selling games on Steam for that year. Bohemia loved it, obviously.
Oh, yeah. How could you not, man?
Yeah. That was their bread and butter. So you had this like established crew that you played with for a while. And then somebody came up with the idea to have this event, right? This like last man standing event. I kind of know that there were a couple guys that came up with the idea, and they were just guys that you had been playing with, right? And the idea just came out of inspiration from, well, let me know, because I read a little bit about it, but I think it came from the movie The Hunger Games, right? And then there was like a Minecraft game mode that was inspired by that too.
So from what I remember, Jordan, this was like when Hunger Games had just came out. So
right?
yeah,
Soma.
Hunger Games was really big at the time, and Soma was kind of like spitballing this idea to kind of do something similar in DayZ because the setting was just perfect for it. And I remember Brian and Kai really liked the idea, and at the time I was like, yeah, it'd be dope, but like I don't know if we're gonna be able to pull it off because I'd never like I don't think it had set in at that point the kind of reach that Twitch was pulling in of like how many people would actually be interested in doing this kind of event.
Yeah.
And so I remember we were talking about it, and Kai was saying stuff about how he was talking to someone through Bohemia, and they were gonna like help us out with the idea. And I was like, wow, this is really going somewhere. And I don't know if there just was no follow-up or if maybe communications had gotten crossed and, you know, Kai had gotten some other idea of what was actually promised. But it ended up like we were like really close to when we were supposed to do this thing, and Kai had been promoting it. And so we had all these people interested, and we didn't really have any of the actual aspects constructed. So Brian like whips this thing up on his own, like all of the work for the first Hunger Game. We called it Hunger Games. The first one
Hunger Games with a Z at the end,
yeah.
Right? Yep. because the game or the mod that's based on is DayZ with a Z at the end.
Yep.
Right. So Hunger Games, yeah.
And it just freaking was huge, right? Like, I don't even remember the numbers, but I remember even for Twitch at that time, it was like #1 most viewed at that time.
Yeah.
Like, I think we were beating out like CSGO at one point because it was like always like CSGO and WoW were like the two big most viewed at that time.
Yeah.
With the event, it just got so many people interested, right? Because you had all the top DayZ streamers were involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
So just all of those numbers combined just brought DayZ to the top during that whole event. And it was crazy because like we were in it, and it was funny because like looking back at it, normally when you're putting an event together, right, you're not also participating in the event, but because it was the first one and it sounded so cool, like all of us wanted to be involved. And I just remember like, dude, this is so dope. And it's like, I feel bad for Brian because he's having to like do all the server stuff and everything. And I'm like, dude, I know he'd really want to do this. But
yeah, no, it was kind of his baby, right? He was fully invested in making this making this successful.
Yeah, he grasped on real early. I think he was like the first ones to really see the potential with it. Cause even I was like, this is cool, but I wasn't seeing as far down the road as he was, like of just the potential and what you could do with this. We kept doing more, and it was like hella stressful, but like at the end of it, you just felt like you just wrangled a boar with your bare hands.
It's insane, man. So I'm going to give a little bit of context from my memory of it, right? So Survivor GameZ is really the first battle royale when it comes to like in the milsim world, right?
Right.
It was, I think, like 40 players. So you'd have a qualifier, right? And you'd have all the guys in the server it's different than Battle Royale in a way because you'd be all lined up in a row, and it was highly controlled by admins. There was really not much automated about it. It was this event. It kind of had this even a narrative to it, right? You start in one zone, and it was like a nesting doll kind of. You'd be like a big zone, and there'd be shrinking zones, and then eventually you'd have like a final showdown to see who came out on top, and then through the qualifiers, a certain amount of people would move on to like a semifinal.
No. It was broken up into the qualifier and then the invitational. So,
okay. Gotcha.
You'd have the invitational is, we'd invite, top DayZ streamers. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
okay, you guys are obviously the tops in
Yeah.
Twitch, like who's better? And that's kind of how it originally started, because it was like a bunch of us talking shit of like, oh, bro, if I ever went against you, I'd fucking take, our crew would take your crew out. And that kind of transition in Survivor games where it's like, all right, well, we got this platform now. Let's see who's really the top dog in DayZ. And then obviously other people in the community wanted to get involved. And it's like, well, you got limited slots, so how can we make this kind of fair to give other players a chance to, compete in this thing that obviously everyone is enjoying based on, the numbers we're looking at viewership wise.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was it a chance to prove your skills, but also participate in this huge event with kind of like the top streamers that you watch all the time, right? So you get to kind of, play with them as well. So
and improve your skills and have that the bragging rights of being, in the tops. Yeah, and I was actually in one of those qualifiers. I looked back into it. I think I was in the fifth one. The fifth Survivor Games is the one I got. I actually went back into the archives and I found the forum, where I put my application in, but it wasn't archived to where I could read it. Yeah, I saw Thoglore was in there too. Yep. I saw his application. So anyway, yeah, and that's how I met you. Is you contacted me on Skype about like being in this qualifier and all this, and I was like, oh my god, this is so exciting. That was one of the coolest parts for me with Survivor Games, because I was a very small streamer, and you guys gave a chance to up and coming content creators who were really passionate about DayZ and just wanted to be involved in any way we could with this event, because it was like the biggest thing. That's like getting called up to the big leagues, being in Survivor Games. Everybody in our community, like all the streamers I know, we all wanted to be involved.
It's funny because like I think the way Dean put it was like it's pretty much like the Super Bowl of DayZ, right? Where everyone kind of is like getting ready, geared up for the freaking event. All the streams of people training and stuff.
But yeah, I was super nervous, man. I actually made it to I made it past the qualifier, but I was pretty trash. So like I didn't really have anything to prove, but it was a hell of a lot of fun.
It's like any other game with that like small aspect of RNG to it, right? You don't know if you're going to run into this spot that has the best loot. So you're kind of just like stuck with what you find. And if someone happens to find a shotgun right off the bat and you're the house next over and you're like, crap, I just got a can opener. Like you could be the best player and you're just screwed, right? There's nothing much you can do about it.
Yeah, I guess people soon found that out when it comes to making it a competition, to where you can't just like respawn on the coast and make it back and get revenge. You got one life, and in a last man standing type of thing, man, you do have to count on RNG. So there was a lot of the spectators of the game who became sort of armchair admins, and like, oh, the admins, they completely messed up that interaction, all these bugs that happened and blah, blah, blah. Everyone went back and forth about like the person that they were rooting for, whoever it was, they thought they got screwed over or whatever. But from my view, man, you guys you worked your asses off to make these events happen, and you made it into something that obviously was highly entertaining. The last Survivor Games, I think, hit, and it was a record at the time, like 62,000 viewers.
Yeah.
Can't remember. Yeah. Nuts. And then, Dean Hall was having, the guy who made DayZ, he's having like parties at his place to watch the Survivor Games every time it was on, It's like, dude, he's way into it.
It was like fun looking back at it. Like it was hella stressful just because like it's like no one's really under any obligation. So anyone could just at any moment, like, you know what, I'm just done. I'm going to bounce. Like,
yeah.
And then you're like, fuck, I got to carry your workload, or like, crap, now we're a dude short. Do we have anyone in reserve? So it was always trying to keep things organized of like, look, we're full right now, but we'd like to have you participate if someone drops out. And there was like a lot of last minute changes like throughout the history of it, of like, something would come up, someone's, family member would get sick. And so you don't realize like all the work that actually went into it from the outside, because there's not all these edge cases, right, that you're considering because you don't have to. But like on our end, it's like all this stress, like, all right, you got that aspect covered. Yeah, we're good here. Okay, what about this? Is loot placed? Like we had to manually go out there and place loot for these events.
Fuck.
It was like a handcrafted experience.
That's a great way to put it. Whereas now, like what Battle Royale became in the different mods and that, it was this like repeatable game mode that was all automated. You know, the loot just kind of automatically shit out on the ground and like everything was already prepared. But for you guys, there was like a story behind it. You had these different zones that people have to go to, and the admins were highly involved. Well, beforehand and during the event too. And eventually you had people like shoutcasting it, like giving commentary for it.
Yep.
You know, that was pretty crazy.
Like we had Smack doing commentary.
Smack and Callendale. Yep.
Jam Jar and Mr. B.
Damn.
I got to work with some really dope people when I was working on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the heyday of the mod for sure. You know, and you did a little bit of streaming back then too. You were streaming on Twitch here and there, or consistently. I don't really know, because honestly, I watched some of your stream here and there, but I didn't really know you until I ended up, like I said earlier, in that campaign, in Thoglor's campaign. So in D&D, that is.
Yeah, like, because I was also like, I think pretty late night focused as well back in the day. So
that
it
makes
wasn't
sense.
like I was pulling in, the zombie guys on late shift and everything.
the European crowd too.
Yeah. Well, because it just kind of naturally like fell into that time zone when I started playing with Kai and Brian and Soma. Brian was West Coast, Kai was West Coast, Soma was West Coast, and I was like, I think the only East Coaster, and then like Tommy was fucking Ireland, whatever time zone that fucking.
Oh man.
is.
Yeah.
So it's like this weird, I don't know how the hell we made it work to where we were pretty much on whenever Kai
sacrifice your sleep.
Oh God. Yeah. I was like, I don't think I saw sunlight for a good year. I think I was pretty much living up the night.
You wouldn't trade that time for anything, I'm sure, because that experience that you have in DayZ mod, everyone always talks about it. There hasn't really been a replacement for it for me.
I mean, what other game can you go get a canteen, fill it full of bleach, and offer it to someone as water, and them not replacing it and poisoning themselves, right? Like,
yeah,
just the stuff you could get up to. Like, we'd kidnap people, like take their blood, and then the blood type stuff came into play, and so then we like evolved from blood pirates to we're now stealing these people's blood, testing what it is, kidnapping people, putting the wrong blood into them, and then sending them off to like go wander down the street till they fall over dead. Dude, this is like just the stuff you could pull off that like you would not see in any game or even think about to do until you're just like, oh wow, like how far did they take this design? Damn, the realism.
I mean, it was just every day was a different adventure, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
You just never knew what would happen.
I think it was a lot of fun to do, kind of like not profiling, but just behavioral experiments, right? Jam did the one where like he was, handcuffed, and he'd have someone in Overwatch, hidden, but he'd have a gun in front of him with one bullet and see like how many people would actually try to save him or just pick up the gun and shoot him, right?
Damn.
And like that stuff, wow, man, you put like there was some thought involved. Like I would have never thought to do that, but like because you're just playing a game where I'm gonna loot up, shoot, and like I think that's what kept me interested in it so long, was just I would find new things to do. Like first it was just kind of looter shooter, and then some social experiments. Just what could I do in this situation, and how would people react? Like I think I ran around Cherno and just like backpack like the child's briefcase and my underwear and some wellies, acting like some little kid looking for his brother who was supposed to help him play the game. And then someone would take me under their wing and I would play with them for like an hour or two, right? To earn that trust, because I don't have any like big guns on me. I'm like going and fetching this guy cans of beans and bringing them back. And then like 2 hours later, I bring him the beans after I'd finally found a magazine for a 1911. But like, here, you should eat this. And he's like locked in the animation. And I would just pull out the 1911 and, like trust no one and pull the trigger. And like, how do you walk? Like, on the other end, I'd always wonder, like, how do you walk away from that play session of like, what the fuck just happened? Like, we built this bond for 2 hours. And then like that stuff was always fascinating to me.
You can't really get mad at that point.
No, because it's like you're there for the experience of just like there's no. It's like if our system went completely into anarchy, right, and there was no law, there was no one to keep things in order. Like, how would people behave?
That's really kind of how the whole mod was conceived. Really, it was kind of like a social experiment in a way to see like whether people would be a bandit or a hero. I guess were the two like archetypes that people pointed to when you talk about DayZ, and at least in the beginning, right? People who would be friendly or not friendly, right?
It's funny to think back to of like how it slowly starts to jade your play style. Do you
Yeah,
ever think
totally.
back on that? Like on like how you first played the game
Yeah.
until like a few months in of like you just almost become like this completely different person in your play style.
Yeah, the first group that I played with were already a little bit hardened,
Mm-hmm.
But for me, like I didn't really know. I would get kind of complacent after nothing would happen for a while. So if a PvP situation occurred, I wouldn't really even know how to like defend myself in a way, because I was still like getting used to the controls. I'd be like, oh, I guess I'll just run, But yeah, definitely that happens in other games too. There's sort of like the everyone's new to the game and trying to figure it out. And then, so people are a little bit more friendly and trying to help each other figure things out along the way. It's not even necessarily role play. A month later, it's just shoot on sight. Everybody's just shoot on sight.
Oh yeah, like
I mean, there's games like Rust that are just like shoot on sight always. But so, well, going back to talking about role play in games. What did you have a background playing D&D when you were younger?
so like I grew up and my mom was like super religious.
Okay.
And like growing up, Dungeons and Dragons was like the gateway to fucking hell.
Same with my stepmom, dude. Same thing.
And it was
We had a cousin, right?
Mhm.
And he played D&D. He was like, 20 or something at the time. My stepmom, she made us pray for him. Because he was turning to anyway, go ahead.
Oh, it's just like, man, sometimes I look back, I had a really like just off the wall childhood of just like you look back like what the fuck? Family was just like for some reason it was like, oh, it's basically practicing witchcraft or something.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it, so I just assumed
Satanic panic.
Yeah, people were in basements drawing pentagrams and spilling goat's blood everywhere or something. I didn't even get exposed to it until college when I was going to Full Sail. It was like my first time D&D, and I didn't really like understand the concept of role play. Really, I just was like, "This is what I'm doing," right? I didn't try to like be my character. I didn't even honestly think DayZ was the first game to kind of get me. Was it DayZ or did I didn't get into RP until I started playing games with Jam. I think that was like I'd fuck around a little bit in DayZ, but it wasn't like anything serious. It was just me being goofy. And then playing, he took a different approach to his immersion in DayZ. Like he'd always try to approach it from like, I am the character, right? Like I'm going to play this, what would typically be an NPC role in any other game. And I thought that was interesting because at that point for me, DayZ was kind of becoming this really rinse, repeat, rude of gear up and then go look for PvP. So I was kind of starting to get burnt out, and that kind of immersed me even further into the game, almost made it a whole new experience. And like, honestly, it'd be cool to see more PV or RP focused game. Kind of like, what was that one they were just came out earlier this year? It kind of got on a rough start at like Life or something.
Was Identity RPG?
Yeah, Identity.
Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah.
Like something like that, I think would be cool to see like actually get off its feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have a kind of support to actually where your designs are based around, providing players with tools to engage in interesting RP, like, custom animations to start. Like you kind of see it have you been keeping up with Star Citizen at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Have you seen the like where the camera is tracking your facial movement? So when you're talking, like your character's mouse opening and everything.
I haven't seen that. That's wild.
Yeah, like it's like a really rough facial capture, but it kind of like your eyes will like if you open up wide your character's eyes, it's a little buggy because it's obviously like alpha tech, right? But it's like this is the kind of stuff that's just going to take that immersion level to a whole new high, in my opinion. I'm like,
is it that or is it VR or augmented reality or something?
I think there's still some technical hurdles and limitations in VR, especially like on the development side.
Yeah. But it's kind of like an arms race to see who can come up with the best software for it, right?
Yeah, I think in this current stage right now, PC still has a slightly upper hand as far as being able to iterate quicker.
Isn't it also that making video games is a business and there isn't really that much money to be made in VR games? So putting a lot of resources into something like a really ambitious role playing game wouldn't be a very wise move at this stage.
See, the business side's always been a struggle for me, right? Because I'm just looking at it purely like, dude, if I was playing this game, I'd have so much fun right now. Like, I'm so childlike in that nature, I think. So where it's like, I think getting into the business side would kill it for me. Like, oh, I want to do all this cool stuff, and then sitting there faced with reality of like, yeah, well, you got to meet all these milestones, got to do this and that by this time, where it kind of like holds you back from if you're working on your own personal like passion project, right? Where you can spend all the time in the world to perfect something or get it how you really want it, versus when you're shipping a title with another company, you're kind of behooving to, their time constraints, and that limits you to how far you can explore an idea. Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago, I did an episode with this guy, Ben from Australia, and he considers himself a bit of a digital nomad, right? He's a game developer, but it took him like a decade to put his game out. But he traveled the world while he was doing it because he had just gotten out of school, and he had the side project just to build his resume. And then he got a job, and then his game got greenlit on Steam, and he's like, well, I want to travel the world now, so I'm just going to develop my game on the side when I have time. And it turns out it took him about 10 years to make his game, but eventually he did it. The whole thing was like he built his own game engine from the ground up.
Oh, wow.
So it was like this whole big thing. But, the whole point is like he wanted to be his own boss, and he wanted to just like if he could make just enough money to live and do something he enjoyed, he'd rather do that than ever like work for somebody else and just punch a time clock. And It wasn't like he loves making games, but he doesn't want to be like in the grind and like just working for a studio on somebody else's vision. And I guess you can only respect that,
Oh yeah, like 100%. I mean, for me, I kind of take a different look on it, right? Working in a studio, you get to learn so much. At least I have been able to, because you get to sit there and talk with people who have been in this industry, right? And they're veterans, and they know all the little things that you might not necessarily even consider.
You get different points of view, and you get different people's experiences that you can ask them. I mean, you work alongside them, so you get some you get hands-on experience, and then you can pick people's brains for how their brains work.
Yeah, like for me, I think I have a tendency to like overcomplicate ideas in my head, like on a first go of like, okay, I'm going to do it and I'm going to tackle it this way. And it's like this huge, big ordeal. And, I'll run it by someone who's, got a lot more experience than me. And they're like, well, do you ever think about doing it like this way? And, it's just like, oh, dude, here I am trying to like, force my way through brambles, right, to get to this chalice. And then like, he's over here like, bro, why aren't you taking the sidewalk? I don't know. I think if I was trying to do that on my own, I would be turning my wheels in the muck a lot longer.
So let me just, I guess we'll just close up this section about, well, let me just try to sum it up from my point of view.
Okay.
You were interested in video games from a young age, and it was something that you got a lot of satisfaction from, right? From playing these games, more so than going to school, obviously. You felt, well, at least from what I heard from you, like you got more satisfaction like completing a level or, defeating a trainer in Pokemon than like doing your homework. Well, no shit. But, and then you figured, why not? I'll join the military. Can't be that bad. At least I'll get my school paid for. So you did that, got out of school. And then your mom was like, well, you like video games. Why don't you go to school for video games? that part kind of blew my mind. Well, thanks, Mom, I guess, right?
I mean, to be fair, at that point, too, for me, it was kind of like, really? Are you suggesting this? Because, like, I don't know. I'd always get railed, growing up of, like, spending too much time on video games. And now it's just like...
Well, it's cool that she took an interest at that point. Took an interest to push you in the right direction, which was great, And then, you had your GI Bill, you got your degree, your bachelor's, which you finished in 2 years, and then you got the internship, right? And then you spent a lot of time on Twitch and playing DayZ with the boys for those 2 years. And then, while you were looking for a job and you got a job, and then time flies, here you are. So you've got a decent job. And like, what does the future look for you? Like, what are you looking forward to in your life as far as your career goes?
I mean, I think like at some point, everyone's got kind of like a passion project, right? That they're always mulling over in the back of their head. And so for me, like going forward, like I'm really happy at the company that I'm working at right now. Like everyone there is just fucking amazing to work with, just genuinely good people, and just the fucking amount of talent is just mind-boggling. But I think like at some point I'd like to get to a spot where I feel comfortable kind of taking ideas a bit further on my own and just kind of exploring some of those and actually fleshing them out instead of just this constant mull over of like, okay, how would I approach that? And then like, jot down some notes for later. I think at some point I'd really like to kind of experiment with the idea of like a game geared towards role play, right? Where there's built-in mechanics. And I think like for a time I was kind of working on a server for Jams, GTA RP, and working with the devs that we had working on just the little script stuff that we were doing. And just seeing that potential, and there is a way to create a world in which you have kind of that stereotypical NPC roles, right? But creating a way in which if a player wanted to, they could take over that role. And just, I think it would be a unique experience. And obviously this is like something way down the road. I mean, there's still limitations as far as for what I see in the vision of it, like later down the path. But I don't know. I think it would just be interesting, right? You're kind of interacting with something that you would expect to be just a program NPC, and it ends up being a player filling in that role because they just feel like being a shop owner for a day or something, right?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff I think is something I'd really like to explore. And then like further Twitch integration into the game of where finding a way to merge. Have you seen Choice Chamber?
Yes.
I thought that was such an amazing concept of like, okay, we're going to give chat some control over elements of like, what kind of mobs are going to spawn or how this room's going to be laid out. And it's something
you can hurt the player, help the player, decide to make the game harder, easier. And it's a choice chamber. I mean, the game is aptly named. Yeah.
But you're also trying to like on the development side, right? You're not trying to give like, how chat can get, right?
Oh yeah, man.
And so you also got to keep in mind this kind of balance aspect of like, how can I make this fun and not just where these people are pretty much just kicking, whoever's playing the game into the dirt.
So how would that Twitch interaction fit in with role play? That's what I'm curious about. I guess those are ideas to be determined. Over time.
I kind of like the idea of like, environmental changes, right?
Okay.
But nothing like super detrimental. You know how we have in some games, like Minecraft, for example, the procedurally generated, right?
Yes.
So you're pulling from kind of this, okay, what am I spawning here? Well, here's my fucking big bag of choices, and you randomly decide out of this bag, right? Well, instead of letting some line of code make that choice, why not give those options to the chat base of like, okay, they're going into this area. What is it going to populate with? On a very like broad stroke, right?
Yeah, like 1 through 5, sunny to rainy type of thing, just as an example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or like, is this going to be like a lava area, or is there going to, like stuff like that, or like what mobs are going to be in this area, where it's a category that any of the choices aren't going to punish the player, but every time you go into an area, you're not sure what to expect because it's being generated by that choices your chat. So like a concept like that, I feel would be like something really fun to kind of explore and experiment with. And if you bring in that into like an RP aspect, right, you have this ever-changing environment of, anytime they say it's like a dungeon or something, right, and they go into there, it's not just like, all right, here we go, we do the loop, we know how everything works. It's like, nah, it's going to be changing all the time.
Yeah,
right?
man.
So your interaction and your experience is always going to be different.
I'm a big fan of procedural generation because it does make things so much more dynamic, right? And games that do it well last a long time. But yeah, it sounds like a big challenge, And how does it? Well, hey, encouraging chat interaction is something. When I did stream a lot, I was always looking for stuff like that. I always catered towards trying to play games that had chat interaction. I was even looking at ways. I played this game 7 Days to Die, and I was looking at ways that the chat could could use like their loyalty points you get from watching the stream, use those to spawn in mobs. And I wanted the thing where like they could give me items, or they could spend a whole lot of points and make the game really hard, like spawn a horde and whatever. It's really difficult to implement though.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to, it's a lot to, it sounds simple, but there's just a lot.
And especially if you're trying to like take it, like single player game is going to bring its own challenges, right? Even with that kind of system, you add in the complexity of trying to get that on a multiplayer aspect, like holy fuck.
So is it fair to say that, oh, you love your job, but you feel like you have this vision that you want and other people want too, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because as far as so far on all the projects I've worked on, I haven't ever felt like, God, I don't want to work on this. I want to go do my own thing. It's never really been that. It's just the aspect of like, you have those constraints, right? Of where you don't have the time to explore all the ideas on this one little thing, right? You got to go, okay, what's going to work? What, is going to be able to be done in the time frame we have. More
what I was saying, you have these ideas for your project that you'd want to do someday, and it's almost like burning a hole in your pocket. Like you're kind of itching to actually put something out in the world. Maybe is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like falling back to everyone wants to somehow leave their mark, right?
Yeah.
And I think the video game kind of gives you, or a video game, I should say, gives you a unique way to do that, because you're definitely going to have to put pieces of yourself into it, right? Like anything you work on is going to reflect who you are as a person. And I think video games kind of have that aspect of you get to see a little bit of everyone who worked on that, right? Of how they viewed something and then translated that vision for other people to see.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you take little pieces of what unless you're coming up with an entirely new idea, there's always something that influenced you along the way, right? So you're paying homage to all of the things that you've experienced in your life and in playing games too.
I think it's another reason too why DayZ really hooked me as well. So it's like growing up, stepdad was ex-military, so he's always like, all right, this is, showing me all like little survival things and stuff. Like, all right, this is how you make a, deadfall, and here's a snare trap. And DayZ kind of was the first like survival game, right? Where like all of that stuff that I had done in the woods growing up, I now can do on a different scale in this video game. No one was ever really doing that, right?
Nobody was, no.
And it was cool because I remember like, oh, this would be cool to be in a video game, like, as you're growing up and stuff. And then just to see that there's other people out there that share that same thought, and you're actually seeing it, in a physical form, and you get to interact with that.
Yeah, you have all these tools, and what are you going to do with it? And it's pretty crazy having learned all of that as a kid and then become an adult, and then finally there's a video game that just catches you off guard.
Yeah, because you just think like, I guess I'm the only one that finds this like survival stuff interesting, and then just to see it explode and really like, oh, there's like a lot of other nerdy dudes out there.
It's
like
wild, dude. Okay, well, let me think of a very out of left field question.
Okay.
How about this? What do you think of the new Survivor game?
I was lucky enough to kind of work on it early on, kind of like halfway through the project with them. So it's good to see, what they've done with it. And I feel like it's unique enough that it just doesn't look like, it's so weird, right? Because like we had the Survivor games, we did this event, and then Battle Royale came out, PlayerUnknown's Battle Royale, and it really just opened up more attention to that genre, I think.
Yeah.
Beyond the scope of Twitch. And it was nice to see that it wasn't something niche, right? That like everyone was really digging this idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool to see what they pulled off with the current Survivor games, because it doesn't seem like they just, we're just going to do everything, that's already being done. Like there's uniqueness to it, like the hot air balloons and the exploding collars, right?
Yeah.
And even just the layout. So you're always going to have those people out there like, oh, they just ripped off, people that aren't familiar with the history behind it. Oh, they just ripped off. It's just another BR clone. Wow. It's like, nah, man, it's a whole different experience, right?
Well, I think the players, myself, well, I can't call myself like a DayZ player, but I was a DayZ player. I was super obsessed with DayZ mod, Survivor games. I was lucky enough to play in Survivor games at one point. So knowing the history of it and seeing where it is now, it definitely is like a lot more respectable in my eyes than others that will just look at it and say, oh, it's another, oh, they just wanted to quote unquote like capitalize on the
Right.
PR of that. Like, come on, man. Like if they wanted to do that, they would have done it years ago, right? You'd think they would have. If they wanted to shit out a game mode, like what people think they did.
No,
I always wondered when they were going to take advantage of that IP, because they purchased it Bohemia purchased Survivor Games at one point. I wondered when they were going to take advantage of it.
I mean, I think it's that splitting your resources, right? Of like, you obviously, they've, even from day one, they've had people like on their ass about like, so when's this thing hitting stable, you know? And so I feel like, I mean, for them too, it's one of those things you struggle with from a business perspective too, is like, okay, yes, this is very popular, but if we just all of a sudden push this out before the game's even done, how is that going to be received, right? And that's the unfortunate side of things, because people, I don't know, maybe I'm just only seeing through one of the lenses, because, you know, the internet's almost like a bubble sometimes, right? Where
Sure.
it's like, it just seems nothing but negative backlash all the time. Or maybe it's just the vocal minority, right?
I don't know, dude. My dad always said this, and okay, call me a boomer if you want. I don't give a fuck. But he always said, like, people are not happy unless they have something to complain about. You know, It's like people are always trying to pick shit apart. You know, my dad wasn't even talking about the internet. He's just talking about people complaining about shit. You know, it's just I don't know, people that are unhappy in their position in life. They're always like looking, it's somebody else's problem. It's not my problem. It's not me that I'm feeling unfulfilled in my life. It's, well, you know, these developers, they're shit and they don't care about the community.
It's like this big ball of transference almost.
I mean, I've been guilty of it at times too.
Oh, I think we all have. Like I said, like there's definitely like aspects of it's just basic human nature, right? Like shit's gonna happen. Not trying to, like, everyone's gonna do it at some point. It's just, you know, how far do you take that negativity that tends to leak out here and there?
Well, I mean, DayZ standalone as a whole, that obviously hasn't been a perfect project. They've had all sorts of difficulties from the beginning, but had they saw that PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, one of the freaking top selling games ever, whatever, it's made them like hundreds of millions of dollars or however much money they made. If they're like, oh man, we got to capitalize on this right now, I mean, the backlash would have been so bad.
Oh,
you know? As it is, you know, the fact that they just announced this thing out of nowhere, everyone's like, what? People didn't even know. Like, I knew that they owned that, but a lot of people didn't.
Yeah, it was pretty much like, again, though, it's because people are automatically, if they like say Survivor Games was more public about the development, they're gonna be like, oh, why are you putting all those resources and this isn't fixed on DayZ and yada yada yada. And it's like totally different team. It's not like we like cut the you know, dev team from DayZ and like scooted over and like, all right, we're working on this now, and like can fend for themselves and figure out what. But that's how people envision it. And there's you could sit there and frickin' tell them all day what's going on, they're not going to believe you.
You can't just like release all of like the internal communications from a development team. It's like people are just going to make up their wild conspiracy theories no matter what. So whatever. You know, at the end of the day, like if the product is good, then, you know, games are always going to have their like fanboys and their haters. It's just the way it goes. And it's almost like it's almost like your game isn't doing it right if there isn't like a healthy mix of the two.
Like, how many times would a new MMO come out and people are like, oh, it's a new WoW killer, and you're just like, why? God,
it's because they always wish it would be true.
But why though? Like, that's the
well, they wanted. I feel like people want to be hipsters. They want to be like, well, this is my little corner of the internet. This is my game that I like, and it's cool, and the thing that everybody else likes that's like huge. It's like a weird jealousy thing. I don't know.
I don't know. I always found it fascinating, even from like a streamer perspective, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you've probably had to have dealt with this at some point where you're playing a game and someone just, for whatever reason, has to come in there and just be like, this game's awful, and just like shit all over the place. And you're like,
why are you here?
If you don't like it, why? Like, does someone have to listen to you? Like, someone has to hear this. Like, I have to get this out.
Yeah, no, it's boy, even with even in the Epoch mod days, you know, people would come in and they'd be like, well, we like this mod better. I'm like, great, good. You're like, your mod is shit, this other mod is better. I'm like, cool, well, thanks. I don't know how to respond to that.
Right? Like, are you trying to sell me to try this out when you're just like, already like, it's interesting because it's like you have someone come in, right? And if I was trying to convince you to come try something else, me shitting all over what you're having fun with is going to make me not want to have anything to do with you or what you like just because of already associating that negatively. Like my first experience into that is already negative. Like, how are you going to try? You'd be a horrible car salesman. Like, your car's a piece of fucking shit. Look at you, you fucking piece of human garbage. Can't believe you'd even set foot in that. Buy this car. Like, I don't want to do shit with you. You're being an asshole, dude. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's just, I feel like people are just undeveloped socially. They're not very self-aware of how they're coming off to people. They don't really have a leg to stand on when you come in and you're just like, this game fucking suck. You're bald. What else? That's what people always say.
God, like, oh, thanks, man. I didn't notice. God, whew, fuck. What am I gonna do about this?
You can only hear it about 1,000 times before you're like, okay, enough, man. Okay, so I don't even think you're gonna have an opinion about this, but it's like one of those questions. Like, if I don't ask it, I don't know. Maybe you'll have a reaction to it or not. There was, the new Call of Duty game. Mm-hmm. They had this like press conference where they were showing some of the campaign. They had some like pretty crazy imagery in the campaign where they were shooting civilians and crazy things that happen in war sometimes. And some veterans came out. There's like this backlash about it, but basically they were saying that developers, Activision, and that Activision's the publisher. Who's the developers of Call of Duty? I forget, but doesn't matter. Right. They're saying like they shouldn't be speaking for they shouldn't be like trying to portray this like super realistic version of war, right? Right. Like they should like, I don't know, like it's a video game. It's not meant to be, no matter how realistic, the way I see it's like, no matter how realistic a video game is, it's still not really meant to be 100% historically accurate. That's like saying that a live action movie is meant to be like a documentary. Like, do you have any opinions on that?
So let me try to reframe this just to make sure I'm kind of understanding what you're asking.
I didn't even ask you a question. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It seems like you're trying to kind of go down, like, if I'm understanding this correctly, almost like they're like, hey, you guys have no right to kind of go over these topics and portray this when you've never experienced it firsthand. So like what you're putting out is skewed because you're only taking from what you're seeing here and there in the media, right?
Well, let me just, I have the article pulled up.
Okay.
Okay. Well, here's a question in this article. How does a game about modern warfare, a game dedicated to realism, justify how it picks and chooses what realities portray in its game? It's like, well, why is like the public trying to tell the developers how to make their art? Because I feel like video games are just art, right? Mm-hmm. They're not, this isn't being portrayed as 100% accurate, or even, it's like more like inspired by, it's just meant to be like an immersive experience, right? Like, am I seeing it wrong here?
I can't speak for everybody in the veteran community, obviously, right?
No.
And everyone's had their, different and unique experiences of what they've been exposed to deployed to a combat zone. I could see getting upset about it if it was like your likeness being used, right? And then them trying to tell a story of your life and then, details are incorrect or whatever. And like, this isn't how it happened. But this is a fictional character in a fictional setting of stuff that tends to happen in war, and how someone chooses to frame that. Like, you don't see people freaking out about fucking war movies on that level, or at least I am. Maybe I'm not looking in the right spot. I don't know.
I think that some of the arguments these guys are making, and me myself, well, what the fuck? It goes double for me. I've never been anywhere close to a gunshot, much less in a war zone. I didn't have that service, Anyway, people are like, oh, you don't see all of the days and weeks leading up to that gunfight. Well, that doesn't make a very interesting piece of entertainment, does it? To have like all of the downtime in there.
Hey, watch this 3-hour long cutscene.
So yeah, I don't know, man. Everyone has the right to their own opinion, but
I think I get more like, it's funny, like you watch movies, right? And you're like, that's not how a grenade explodes. And you're doing shit like that. And then you see, this, like you're bringing up, and you're just like, yo, dude, just chill. It's different when you're just watching it with your homies, right? And you're like, it's not, like, it's fucking not that big and shit like that.
Yeah.
And then to just like lose your shit on the internet about like how they decide to tell their story. Like, bro, it's a fictional piece of work. Are you going to sit there now and go through all those war books that got published, like fictional stories, and start like flaming these dudes too? Like, I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but really, I was glad I got to hear your perspective on it. But also, like, I can see. Well, imagine that you're this guy that like just can't. The war just doesn't leave him no matter what, right? And his life fucking sucked after he came back, and people didn't treat him very well. I've heard that story a lot. You know, my uncle was in Vietnam, and he came back home, and he thought that like he was kind of at least be a little bit of a local hero. He thought that people would treat him well, and people did not like the Vietnam War. And when he came back, people were not like super receptive to that. And he went to his dad. His dad was in World War II, and he was telling him about it. He's trying to talk to him, and he's like, well, Dad, you know, people just don't respect me. They don't respect the fact that I was over there and served. And he's like, listen, the war is over. You just got to fucking get over it. You know, like he was still fighting his own demons from being in the war. He didn't have any time for that. That's just the way the public treated people back then. I'd like to think nowadays it's different, but still veterans do get left to fend for themselves more often than not, which is sad. You could see like a guy like that's kind of felt like they've been left to fend for themselves. I can't think of another way to put it. How they seeing something that's like, oh, this is just a big piece of entertainment. Everyone's just fucking eating popcorn and watching this really badass movie about war, and they don't know what I went through. So you can always see that too.
Yeah, I mean, everyone comes with their baggage, comes out of that with their baggage.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree, like, dude, shit can get rough. At the same time, if it's rough for you, man, like, go get some help. I think it's the hardest thing in the military is that you're always told to suck shit up, right? And then like, oh, don't be a pussy. Fucking ain't nothing wrong with your brain. And it's like, nah, dude, like there is some truth to like the shit you're exposed to is going to affect you, right? Like no matter on what scale, there's going to be something that you take away from that experience. And whether that's something that haunts you or something that you're proud of, depending on what that moment was. But like, if you sit there and don't deal with your shit, it's going to just get worse. And I think that's like the biggest thing. If I, was talking to anybody that was going through problems is like, look, dude, there's no shame going and getting help and talking to this about someone, because typically, at least in my experience in the military, it's a lot of dark humor, right? And that's the way you deal with it, but it's not really being dealt with, right? It's the kind of, you're just constantly brushing it off. It's like a really bad case of dandruff, right? It's not going away, but you're just trying to shake it all off your black shirt.
You gotta stay sharp, right? Like you can't just completely break down.
Yeah, it's like you gotta just suck it up, go and get some freaking Head and Shoulders, right? I mean, it's a goofy analogy, but it's the best way I can try to frame that.
Yeah, treat the symptoms, not the problem.
Right, because then it's just you're sitting there and it's like you're this big hose of all this negative stuff growing from that and then just being pumped out. And it's like, well, not only now are you suffering, but all these other people are kind of, dealing with this chaos you're throwing out of how you're trying to process this. And it's just go talk to somebody, right? And get that out there and like just flush that system.
I think we're fortunate nowadays. I don't know what it's like on the veteran side, but at least we can have these conversations about mental health, and it's not seen as like this, at least for men, like as this like faux pas thing of like, you're not really seen as weak. But like you said before, is it, or is it true that, you're still kind of ingrained with that, like suck it up mentality? Have the resources improved for veterans and with mental health? I don't know.
My experience with the VA was kind of hit or miss. Like sometimes I felt like I got what I needed, and there's other times where I felt kind of left out to dry. But this again was back in 2012.
Yeah.
Where it was kind of, the whole system was a clusterfuck. I've heard it's gotten better. I haven't had to really utilize any of that stuff, like the resources. So I can't really firsthand experience like, oh yeah, it's great, or no, it's still shitty.
Well, I mean, at least
things have gotten better.
Yeah. At least like the internet is a place where people can come together and really just veterans finding a way to kind of band together in like support groups or, whatever activities. Like, well, I talking like an idiot here, cause I don't really know, but it seems like the guys that I've talked to, even at the freaking community college that I'm going to, taking some classes there, they have like a little veteran center. It's like just this trailer. It's like this trailer, we call it a mod, but really it's like a trailer, and it's got a little office in there. It's air conditioned. there's a guy that's in there all the time, and people can go in there and they get connected to resources. And like, wow, that's pretty cool. Just at this little community college, and all the veterans that they always like to hang in there together and, you know, chat, because they kind of miss that camaraderie of the enlisted life, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, because it's funny. Like when I first got out, it was kind of weird, kind of getting back into like the normal civilian way, like everything, like it's like a fraternity almost, right? Where you're just like, everyone's very outspoken, what's on their mind, not worrying about offending anyone, because everyone just speaks what's on their mind unfiltered.
Yep.
You're dealing with life and death stuff, right? There's no need to pussyfoot around shit.
Yeah.
It just gets in the way.
Cuts all the fakeness and drops it, right? Like there's no time.
I mean, there's still a little bit of that, and that's always going to be there. But yeah, for the most part. But it was like such a weird transition for me, because I was always just very blunt, and just the way people who weren't never exposed to that kind of lifestyle would just really take it the wrong way. You know, sometimes they're just like, dark humor joke would slip out, and you just get the look of like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And it's weird because it's like alienating in this way, right? Because you're like, is there something wrong with me? Like, fuck. Like, am I just this like weird, dark, someone thinks I'm like,
kind of made you feel like an outsider
for a little bit, and then you just kind of like readapt to like, oh yeah, you can't really, you know. And it wasn't so much of like just saying stuff that wasn't like offensive or anything. It was just like, you know, like people would ask you questions, and then you tell them stories of stuff that happened. And for me, I try to be like, here's all the facts, here's everything, let me explain it to you in graphic detail, right? So I'm painting you this picture like you were there. But for some people, while that might not necessarily, I don't see it as messed up as they do, because I was exposed to so much of that. For them, it's like horrifying, right? And you're like telling them the story, and you're watching this horror creep across their face, and you're like, fuck, okay, well, let me try to, I guess not, let me pull out some of these details, because I guess you just can't. And it's weird because like, for me, I'm just not realizing how heavy it is, right? Because it's just day to day. And I think that's the most thing that like or one of the things I became like really aware of was just like, okay, I got to tone it back a little bit.
Yeah, some people just, the shock of that, they like never even want to hear about it, right?
Yeah, I think that we're just so, I mean, not that we're desensitized to the violence, but just the aftermath to us, it's already processed as aftermath, right? Whereas, you know, people are seeing this mental picture in their head when you're explaining it, and are just horrified because they're living in that at the moment of never being exposed to that level of violence.
Right. They see like the news story as like, okay, however many dead, however many injured, and they don't like the other details. Yeah, it's all about numbers. I mean, fuck. My dad and I used to watch all of the like History Channel growing up, like the documentaries about the battles in World War II, and you could dive in for 1,000 hours and not learn like 5% of what went on there. But yeah, even those documentaries don't go into too gory detail. Hearing it from like a point of view perspective is a whole nother ball of wax. Not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Any video game related, role play related, like what type of stuff content wise do you have to look forward to over the next, like the rest of this year? You said that you were involved with doing some RP in the Red Zone, which is a DayZ standalone server, jam jars, right?
Yeah, he's put together a DayZ Red Zone with some mods and stuff. It's kind of a unique and fun experience for the game, because normal public servers, it's pretty much KOS, right? Kill on site.
Yep.
Whereas what he's done with his servers, he's set aside unique zones where, sure, if you want a KOS, here's your area to do that in, right? And it's in settings that make sense, like military areas, where you're only really going in there to get these guns to kill other people, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of a hotbed that people fight over. Trying to enforce RP in that area would be difficult at best, right? Because it's a resource you're competing over. But the rest of the map, you're running through the woods. Nothing's more frustrating than just like running, all of a sudden you're just dead, right? There was no interaction. You're just dead. Like, it's not really that immersive. So what he's done is set, aside these areas for that KOS type activity, but there's this vast area to explore storytelling and create these settings and unique moments of interaction that, fuck, there's so many times playing with him doing RP stuff where you're just like, dude, you would never back in the day get a chance to kind of explore that idea in that fashion, right? Because you're either limited on a rails through this, game and NPCs and everything.
Mhm.
Whereas with, these modded DayZ servers, like, you can be a merchant, you could be this vagabond wandering the fucking wasteland, maybe trading stuff that you found for things that you need. So it kind of brings the realism in and this unique opportunity to craft these stories in a setting that's believable. And I think that's addicting in its own nature because it lets you explore all these thoughts, that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get that interaction on any other server, because like the moment you see someone else, they're just gonna kill you, right?
Yeah, and it's a big draw for viewers too, for the content creators that are doing it. Jam Jar and many others.
Yeah, you get to sit there and watch a story unfold, right? And who knows how it's gonna swing because it's based on these other characters' whims.
Pretty wild, man. Okay, I had 2 questions, and then what the fuck? I got into that one, and then I forgot. Okay, let me think for 2 seconds.
It's all good.
Oh, okay. Oh, I got it. Okay, so you're like kind of all in on this RP gameplay, whether it comes to DayZ or otherwise, like this hypothetical project that you have kind of planned for the future. You must see this as something that's going to outlast the cycle that like survival games on their own lasted, right? Do you see that as like kind of the future of this kind of niche area of, let's say, like PC gaming and kind of integrated into content creation on Twitch, like stuff like you're doing at the Red Zone? You think that that's going to be relevant, let's say 5 years from now?
I think it could be. I'm definitely not one to be able to predict any kind of markets.
Well, like how long of a life cycle do you think it could have, or do you think it could evolve into something else?
Well, I mean, it could be. If you think of World of Warcraft, right, and updates are constantly pushing out new content with a system where you're kind of catering to RP, you could keep going. Like, I could sit here and throw out new mod ideas all day for DayZ. Right. Mm-hmm. And with an RP title like that, where you're trying to bring in Twitch integration, you could constantly be pushing out new tools for, chat to engage in the game, new tools for the players. Like DayZ right now, like there's really no like herbal crafting, right? Where you go out and gather certain herbs and create things for certain sicknesses, or, if it was an RPG title, like potions or whatnot, right? New content can be constantly generated. I don't think there's really an end cycle unless, your players just for whatever reason are not. I mean, I think you're going to want to try to incorporate some lore, right?
Okay.
Where it's something that they're invested in that story and they want to keep contributing.
Sure.
And I think if you get that hook for them to make their own little story, right, that becomes part of that overall lore, you're just going to bring them closer to that title because they're going to be more invested of that little part that they've contributed.
So is the onus on like people creating like different mods or modlets or scripts or things that are integrated into the game, or is it on the players to create their own stories? Because I don't know, I'm not sure actually.
Well, I think for me it's kind of like this blank canvas, right? And it's like, let's see what you can paint on here, and you give them the tools to do that.
There you go. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. Last question. Are you going to any cons? I just thought of this a minute ago. Are you going to any cons? Going to like TwitchCon, PAX West, anything coming up here?
Not this year, just because just work. I want to save up all my vacation time pretty much to get like a nice big chunk.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to sit some out this year, but probably next year I'll be out at them again.
Okay. Anything that you want to you want to throw out your Twitter handle? People can get a hold of you or anything? I don't know. You don't seem like the type of person that's like too active on social media and stuff like that. So
I only got into Twitter because everyone was giving me shit for not being on it back when I did stream. And then after kind of putting that on hiatus, after I got involved in game dev, it's more of I just use it to like keep tabs on what I'm missing, in previous scenes, and then like found a bunch of other devs because they'll, put out what they're working on in Unreal, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Wonder, how you could take it this way and stuff like that.
I got you.
It's more of like a news feed for me.
Yeah, no, I got you. The mysterious Lou. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like your Twitter handle is a secret, but
No.
You're at the I can't even say it.
At Dat Official Lou.
Dat Official Lou. Gotcha. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this is great, man. I'm glad I got to learn more about your story that I never would have guessed. So maybe I can have you on maybe I can have you on in the future, and if you got more things that we could speak in more specifics than.
Oh yeah, I'm always down, man.
That'd be great, man. Thanks.
Yeah, anytime. Just hit me up.
Cool. Music in this episode is from the amazing, talented Data Rebel. I'm just the guy who likes to listen to stories. My name is Dan Dahlstead. I edited this episode, and my friend TipsyJack helped me mix it. If you want to hear more of the show or subscribe, you can find us on our website, pod.co/emotive. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Emotive Podcast. I'm going to be off next week for a family event. Episodes will be resuming on the 26th. And coming up, we've got some more interesting guests, so stay tuned, and thanks for listening.